I'm an alcoholic. It's not with pride that I admit this, and I have no intention of trying to show off with telling everyone how much I can drink, what I can drink, how hard I party, anything like that. Maybe when I was younger it would be something to boast about, but nowadays it's the hanker that drags me down more than anything in life. Being in quarantine hasn't helped at all either, because instead of going out and doing things while drinking, my life had become watching movies, watching online videos, and drinking. But I think that's all going to end very soon. I've tried all the usual things people tell you to do for drinking problems. Tried going to AA, but the religious aspect sort of turned me off. If it isn't an issue for you, more power to you, but it just didn't work for me. I went and saw a therapist for a little while before it got too expensive to see one. I'll admit, for a little while I felt better about myself and thought I might be able to give up drinking. Wasn't in the cards though. For a time, I thought there was nothing powerful enough to get me to stop drinking. I never counted on fear. About a month ago was when it started visiting me. Sometimes it shows up when I'm so drunk I can barely keep my eyes open, and I pass out before my mind can fully comprehend that it's there. Sometimes I'll take the first sip from a can of beer or the first shot of the night and I'll notice it right away. It's never been in the same place twice. Sometimes outside my house, sometimes inside. I don't know how it gets in. I've spent a pretty penny on sealing up every crack, nailing every loose floorboard, locking every door and window, and that doesn't seem to stop it. The worst thing is that I'm pretty sure I know what it wants, and it isn't good. Like I said, the first time this thing came to me was around a month ago. You'll have to forgive me with some of these events because there were times I was really drunk, like close to alcohol poisoning drunk. So details are hazy for me during these nights. But I do remember the first clearly, even with the drinking I'd been doing. It's very hard for me to black out from drinking. Anyway, I was sitting on my futon in the living room and a bottle of tequila already gone, and I was already halfway done with a bottle of rum. I was busy watching the second Lord of the Rings movie, a childhood favorite, and was playing a drinking game alongside watching it. For the record, I don't remember the exact name of the drinking game, but I wouldn't recommend it. A drinking game for a movie that's over 3 hours long is dangerous in the least, fatal in the worst. So there I was, shot in my hands, and ready to take it down in a few seconds for a scene that I had watched over 1,000 times. When suddenly there was a large smacking sound at my front window, like something really hard hit. This surprised me so much that I spilled my shot all over when I jumped in fright. Because of that, it was in anger that I turned from my futon to look at the window to see what the hell had made the noise. That anger quickly turned to confusion as there was something pressed against my window, but I couldn't for the life of me figure out what it was. All the lights were out, including my outdoor light, so the only light my eyes could use to see anything was coming from the TV. Also, the fact that I was drunk as a skunk didn't help. There was this rope thing hanging across my window. Again, I could only see the outline of it with the dim light of the TV, so I couldn't see color or texture. But this thing wasn't a rope at all. It was pulsing and shifting slightly even though there was no wind from outside. Annoyed that something had interrupted my nightly drinking ritual, I stumbled up from my futon and shuffled my way to the door. I briefly stopped looking at the thing so that I could flip on the outdoor light from the switch panel next to the door. As soon as the light came on, there was a sudden rush of movement, with a squelching, slimy sound accompanying it. With surprise, I quickly turned my head back to the window and there was nothing there that I could see. I blinked a few times in confusion, trying to clear the fog in my head so I could accurately assess what had just happened. The grip of alcohol was too strong for me though, and I ended up just making some excuse of a branch or something. I stumbled back to my couch and continued with my night. Events like this happened for the first week. I would be deep into a bottle and some noise from outside of my house would grab my attention. Something would slam against a wall or there would be violent shaking on my front door or my back door. Once I heard something shattering and in the morning I found that the outside light next to my back door had been broken. Yet with all that happening, I never saw anything. At least I don't remember seeing anything. Things suddenly went up a notch. I think 8 or 9 days after it first made itself known, I was in my kitchen getting my nighttime lineup of booze ready. It was somewhere around 7:30 at night and the sun was just about to set, so I had my kitchen light on. I cracked open my first beer and started chugging it. I had my head tilted back all the way as I chugged, but my eyes were wandering around the kitchen aimlessly, trying to find something interesting to look at. When they scanned across my kitchen window, I ended up coughing and sputtering from the thing I saw there. It was the same rope thing I had a distant memory of seeing on my front window. Now in light of both sobriety and my kitchen overhead, I could clearly see that this thing was not a rope. It was a dark purple, dark enough that it could blend into the night effortlessly. Suction cups were along the entire length of it, with each little cup armed with needle-like teeth. I had a goddamn tentacle hanging across the outside of my kitchen window. My eyes weren't on it for long, though, as the shock of seeing this thing was the cause of the stopping of my chugging and my coughing fit afterwards. When I finally calmed down to get my wits again, I looked back at the window and there was nothing there. That didn't satisfy me, though. Grabbing a flashlight and turning on all my outside lights, I exited the front door and made my way to the side of the house where my kitchen window was, determined to find some evidence of whatever that thing was. Nothing. Not a blade of grass out of place, no slime or fingerprints on the wall or the window itself. There was nothing to prove this thing had been there. I continued to look around in vain, trying to convince myself that there had been something there. No matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find a single thing out of order. With resignation, I went back inside and started drinking. I was a little depressed because I was sure that there had been something, and even though I would randomly get up from my drinking spot and try as stealthily as I could to check all the windows, nothing was ever there. The tentacle sightings went on for a couple of days. It actually got me to reduce my drinking somewhat, as I wanted my wits about me to see if I could easily catch sight of the tentacle. Twice, I swear, I almost made it outside quick enough to catch the thing, but it would always be gone before I could get out to the spot that I saw it in. It was almost fun, like a game I was playing with something. It would tease me with its presence, challenging me to react fast enough to catch it in the act. All fun and games went out the window, though, when it decided to show its face. Dipping into my ever-decreasing savings, I had bought a couple of hidden cameras and put them all outside, all pointing to places like the windows and 2 doors. I had an app on my phone that allowed me to access them at any time and watch them live, so I did just that. All throughout my drinking, I kept my eyes on my phone, watching the 5 little screens, intent on capturing this thing on footage, and maybe faking it out so that way I could see it with my own eyes. Things didn't go exactly as planned. I had been watching for hours and nothing came into any of the frames. Frustrated, annoyed, and blasted by this point, I got up from my futon and started making my way to the bathroom. I still had my phone in my hand and my sloppy movement accidentally turned on the flashlight function, suddenly sending a beam of light towards the hallway entrance that would lead me to the bathroom. What I saw there, illuminated in the beam, made my blood freeze, and the adrenaline that suddenly pumped into my system cleared my head instantly. Imagine if one of those messed up faces that Pablo Picasso drew met an H.R. Geiger picture. They had a one-night stand, and this thing was the result of it. It was a huge head peeking around the corner staring at me. The head that housed the face was long and oval, kind of like a squash, and it was the size of a man's torso. Disturbing purple skin covered it, at least I think it was skin, because I could clearly see many veins and arteries pumping some gray-black goo through them. But its face, dear God, its face. One huge eye was situated in the middle of it all with vertical eyelids. Where human eyes are white, there was red, and there was no iris, just a triangular pupil. Slits covered the entire thing, and I'm guessing that that's how it smells. Or maybe it uses the pits to sense heat like a snake. I don't know. There was no hair at all, and seemingly no mouth. But when the light from my phone hit the enormous pupil that had been staring right at me for God knows how long, it closed its eye, and a mouth located where a person usually has their ears opened up and hissed in pain. Faster than something that size has any right to move, it disappeared into the darkness of my hallway, leaving me slack-jawed and shaking in absolute horror at what I had just seen. If it had attacked me, then I would have just stood there in disbelief and had been dead in seconds. However, the thought of this thing attacking me sprung me into action, and with fight or flight fully activated, I dove back to my futon and reached underneath of it for my home protection item. I would have liked to have had a gun. I would still like to have one, but firearms in the hands of really drunk people is a very bad idea. Besides, there's no telling if one night in a miserable state I would end up doing something with that gun I had no plans to do when I was sober. I'm kind of miserable, but I'm not that miserable. At least not yet. But that didn't mean I had nothing to defend myself with in case someone broke in and tried to harm me. I have a Bowie knife for that. Large blade in hand, I dashed back to the hallway entrance and shined my light down it. There was nothing. Carefully going to each of the 3 rooms in the hallway plus the closet, I peeked in to see if some monstrosity was waiting to grab me and do who knows what to me. Each spot I looked was empty, and as the adrenaline began to leave my system and the booze returned, I became braver and checked places like under my bed and in my closet, places that would be far too small for this thing to hide in, looking back on it. Convinced that whatever that thing wasn't in my house anymore, I still decided against drinking anymore and ended up passing out on my couch. That next night, I was planning on confronting this thing. Armed with my knife, I walked around my house from dusk till dawn, not a drop of alcohol crossing my lips. Nothing happened. The night afterwards, I did the same thing. Another peaceful night. The third night I didn't patrol or anything, but I still slept with my Bowie knife at arm's length and didn't have any alcohol. Not a single disturbance throughout the night, as I spent most of it awake, listening intently for the slightest creak or shuffle. Finally, 4 nights after seeing the face, I allowed myself to drink again, naively thinking maybe I'd scared this thing off and it wasn't going to bother me anymore. Right before I drifted off in a drunken haze, I saw the damn face staring at me from the kitchen. I wanted to react, but I couldn't. I was too drunk. I could barely keep my eyes open, and what I thought was an extended blink turned into sunlight coming through the front window. So I've tried to experiment with this thing. I've pretended to drink, and it doesn't come by. I once pretended to be passed out drunk and was just waiting to see what it would do. It probed me. Not in any way sexual or anything, but I felt this thing's tentacles poke and prod me all over. So now I know that this thing has more than one tentacle. The tentacles are probably its limbs. And it's interested in my body. So since that night, I haven't been drinking. And it's been hell. Whatever you hear about the withdrawal symptoms of alcohol, I can guarantee you that experiencing them is worse. It's been so bad that yesterday I almost decided to start drinking again. I had a can of beer in my hand, the shakes making it hard to open, when I noticed on my TV, which I always keep on for background noise, was playing my favorite episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It was the rum ham episode, and I was distracted from my want to drink for a half an hour, laughing and enjoying myself for the first time in a while. After the episode finished, my craving for the beer came back. But I wanted to enjoy the drink, so I looked for something more to watch. I came across the old Twilight Zone show, the black and white one, which I used to binge heavily. I decided to load it up, opened my beer, and was just about to take a sip when I noticed the episode being played, To Serve Man. For those of you who don't know the episode, aliens land on Earth with a book called To Serve Man, which they market as a book that will bring peace to all mankind. At the end, it's found out that serve doesn't mean serve like a servant, but serve like on a plate. The gears started spinning in my head as two separate TV shows, decades apart in creation, combined to form a horrible thought that made me drop my beer to the floor. A rum ham to serve man. A rum ham to serve man. To serve a rum man. That's why it comes when I'm drinking, or in its eye, marinating. I just hope I can clear any last remaining alcohol stored in my body before it gets impatient and decides that I'd be tasty just on my own.